for them. I'm your host, Brian Wieters, Group Vice President of Franchise Development at Neighborly. I've spent over 30 years in franchising, leading development teams at multiple brands in the quick serve, business services, and home services industries. Today's guest is Luke Stanton. Luke is the president of Neighborly's ProTradeNet. Neighborly is the world's largest parent company of over 30 home service brands and more than 5,000 franchise locations in 9 countries. Luke has worked within the franchise world to help build strong relationships between businesses and vendors to transform businesses for the better. Joining Neighborly in 2011, Luke is the key driver in building opportunities for franchisees by improving communications, leveraging buying power, securing special pricing, negotiating rebates, and providing customizable vendor programs. During today's webinar, Design Your Life, Luke will help you think about how you want to live your life and help you distinguish your values based on what you value most, what describes you best, and what you stand for. By looking at your values and rules you would like to set for yourself, you will discover how to navigate through life's journey. Thank you for joining us today, Luke.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
It's great. We're looking forward to listening to this topic and learning more about franchise ownership and Neighborly. Luke, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Brian. All right. So today we are talking about Design Your Life. And Design Your Life is all about living intentionally. And this is one of my most favorite subjects here at the organization. I've been with Neighborly for almost 12 years now, and I went through Design Your Life when I first started the company, and many of our associates continue to go through this. And in fact, my wife and I actually go through the structure of your Design Your Life every single year. So we talk about it, we live it. It's something that impacted my life in a powerful way. And I can't wait to share some of those things with you during the presentation. And one of the things that we always do is go through our quick code of values. So for us, we live our code of values by showing respect for all people, acting with integrity in all dealings, serving customers with enthusiasm, and having fun in the process. So I am very dynamic when it comes to this, and so I'm looking for you to engage with your working document, to take notes, to write in there. And so I'm going to be going fast, sharing my story, and walking you through what it looks like to live intentionally. So here we go. And the very first thing I have for you is something that appears to be very obvious. And so this is where we start to engage a little bit. What I'd like you to do is just take a quick second and write down all the things that you think this could be used for other than the obvious. Now, when I talk to groups about this live, one of the things that always comes up is drying paint. So I'm sure that's like the first thing that came to your mind when you saw this picture. And as you're working down that list, I'll share a couple things with you about this and some things that might challenge you. So what's interesting is there was a study done, a large study on creativity. And this slide is kind of specific for that. So it may take you a couple minutes to write down 10 things or 15 things. But what's interesting is if you put this in front of children, children almost have an unending list of possibilities. And when I've talked to my daughter about this, my own daughter, it could be used for things that I never even thought of. And every audience is different when it comes to what kids think about. And what's interesting about that is that children really have no parameters, right? They have there's no guardrails around how they think about what could be, right? When you ask your kid what they want to be when they grow up, they'll say everything from a dinosaur to a puppy to an astronaut. They just don't know. And it's because they probably haven't experienced enough of life for those mental parameters to start being built around us. And so now that you've worked through your list, I'm curious how many you have. Most groups as adults have just a handful, less than 10, less than 15. It doesn't really go beyond 15, and that's because as adults, we've created some mental blockers where we've built guardrails around our own thinking. And what happens is that ends up affecting how we dream. And dreaming is vitally important as you embark in business ownership or really anything that you want to do, because it's really important that you dream big. You dream big. You think about what could be. You think about the possibilities, and you don't put the parameters around it. Because as soon as you start to do that, those guardrails begin to determine what can and cannot be. And so for you, as you go through this and you're looking at your list and it may only be a couple things on there, that's okay. This is a great starting place. Because what we're going to do is we're going to zoom way out and we're going to look at what does it take to start dreaming. And I'm going to walk you through some ways to do that. And every kind of topic that we go through is going to take us down, and we're going to get narrower and narrower on what it takes to live intentionally. So we're zooming way out and we're just dreaming right now. What could be? And the best way to do that is for you to create a dream list. Now, when I ask groups what their dream list is, don't put any parameters around it, right? Don't ask for any rules or questions or anything like that. Just start dreaming. So what did you want to be? And this is a good way to start. What did you want to be when you grew up? And I see lots of answers that come through on this topic. Everything from being a Top Gun pilot, or being the president, or being in office, or whatever it might be, owning my own boat. And these dreams don't have to be specific for what you accomplish. They could be things that are just important to you. You want to have a big family. You want to have lots of kids. You want to have lots of grandkids. You want to run a marathon. I mean, whatever it might be, the important thing is that you create that dream list. And I'm really curious how many of you have actually, done this in the first place, but do it on a consistent basis. So how often are you revisiting your dream list? And I'm in this boat, okay, because I went through this class, and in so many ways, my eyes were opened up to what could be. And what could be was kind of dependent upon someone helping me see. So those are really important factors to remember, because as you start to create your own dream list, it's not just about the dreams that you have, the aspirations that you have, physical, mental, whatever it might be. They have great implications for the people around you. Because I really couldn't see that much further down the line until someone started to help me see what could be. And for your kids or for your family, for your team members, the people that are part of your organization or whatever that might be, they need that, right? They need someone to kind of come alongside them and show them what could be. So the first thing is create that dream list. And that can be anything, right? It could be a physical target. I'm trying to lose weight. It could be a small dream. It could be a big dream. But the most important thing is to create that dream list. And it doesn't need to be 10 things. What I would challenge you to do is write down 50 things. And if you're really crazy or ambitious, can you write down 100 things? How long can you get that dream list? And again, don't put those parameters around it. Once you have that dream list, there's a good way to start testing that dream, to start narrowing down the things that really matter. And not that there's any sort of bad dream per se, but you are only given so much time. And with that time, you have to decide on how you use those resources to work towards those dreams. So again, we've zoomed way out, right? We've just started with a dream list so far. The next thing you can do is start to go through and test that dream. So does that dream make you more secure? Does it give you more peace of mind? Is it additive to the people around you? Is it just a personal dream? And that's okay to have a dream that only affects you, but how does your dream impact your family? How does it impact your organization? How does it impact your community? Those kinds of things. Does it reduce anxiety? Is it paying down debt? Does it make your relationships healthier? Do you get healthier as a result of these dreams? These are really great ways to start to filter through things that are really most important, because again, even though you may have that list of 100 things, some are personal to you, some are specific to you, and some are maybe a little bit broader than that and affect the people around you. It's important to start prioritizing those things because we're only given so much time in a particular day. So that's the basis, right? That's just where we're going to start out right now, that dream list. Test that dream and maybe start to filter out what are the dreams that are most important for you right now. To put that in context, and I've shared a little bit about that already in terms of timing, and this sounds a little funny to do this, all right? And when you go to most presentations where they're talking about setting goals, this is an interesting one because this one's kind of left out. And the reality is that we're not going to live forever, okay? We're just not. And maybe that's a shocker to you. I don't know. I'm sorry if that's the first time you've ever heard that. But, on earth, where we're at right now, you're given only so many years. You're just not promised tomorrow. And that's just the stark reality of the life that we live. So when it comes to dreams, we have a terrible tendency to put those things off until next year, until tomorrow, right? So think about New Year's resolutions. Everyone's like, in October, November, and December, you're starting to kind of think about those things. And you're like, well, I'm going to have that extra plate of pie or turkey, or, I'm going to do this thing or this thing because I'm going to close out the year basically like I always have done. But you know what? January 1, everything about my life is going to dramatically change. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, you could attest to the success rate of a New Year's resolution. If that's the January 1 date that you kind of pick and choose to start doing that new thing. So the point of this is we've got to put into context the things that we're chasing after, the dreams, the things that are important to us. And so what I would ask you to do is, and you can do this on a sheet of paper, or you can do this in the document that you have. On the left-hand side, you have DOB, so date of birth, right? So I'm just going to share with you guys the specific example to me. So 3/5/84, you guys are doing the math. I'm 38 years old already, okay? So on the left-hand side, you really want to put your date of birth. And on the right-hand side, you want to put the day that you check out. So I know it sounds a little funny to pick a checkout date, but just go ahead and pick a checkout date. And you can pick 100 years or that you're going to check out 100 years old or 90 years old, obviously, or 150. I don't really care. 150, not very realistic per se. So try to be realistic, I guess, when you're picking that. And in this center, what you want to do is mark your current age. And that gives you some context. If you're 30 or if you're 40, 50, 60, 70, and you think you're going to check out on this particular age or date, then it gives you some context for the importance of not putting this off until tomorrow and to live intentionally today. And as you're going through this presentation, all this great information that you're kind of taking in, it's cause for doing something today and not pushing that off tomorrow. Because the best way to start addressing those habits and our kind of constricted thinking about how to pursue our dreams is to do something immediate, right? And so this is a great way to give context, timeline to that dream list, which is really, really important because we're going to start digging into the detail about how to go after those things. So, that's the stark reality of it. We don't live forever. And I'm 38 right now, so I'm, 38%. If I'm going to be 100 years old, I'm 38% of that. I'm, closing in on halfway through how much time I think I have. And so really, even if you're 20, you really don't have any time to sit back and just kind of waste away or not live intentionally. Because the reality is if you're not living intentionally and setting these things for your life, you're still kind of living intentionally. Life is going to happen to you, and life is going to start dictating where you go and what you accomplish. And so it doesn't matter where you're at or how old you are, you've got to make an active decision to do things that take your life in a very specific direction versus just sitting back and kind of letting life happen to you. So that's the importance of setting that timeline for the dreams and the context for what you're chasing after. So the other thing that I would tell you to do with this is to take this sheet of paper. You can pull it out of your working document, and you can put this somewhere that is very visible. In fact, I'm going to ask you to probably put a lot of things that are in places that you can see and that others can see as well. So what you don't want to do is just say, oh, that's nice. I'm 40 or I'm 50 and I'm halfway through. Interesting. What you want to do is you want to put that so that it's a daily reminder of living intentionally. So hang on to this. This wasn't just an exercise that we started and finished, all right? Hang on to this. So zooming in a little bit further, we have to start to look at the categories of life. Now, we think most of life and the things that we're chasing after fall into these kind of 6 neat categories. Now, you may have a category that's not represented here that you would like to put here, but we think life is kind of represented in this social aspect, spiritual or ethical, physical, family, business, financial, and mental. Probably put most of life into these quadrants. And so if you're trying to figure out, here are the dreams, I have so much longer left in my life that I think, what am I going to tackle first? You need to have an honest conversation about where you stand before you can start to think about what you're going to tackle first. If you just got back from the doctor and they're like, look, you've got to lower your cholesterol now, physical might be a category that you want to pay attention to, or mental, just mental health in general, right? That may be a category that you want to pay attention to, okay? So think about some of the things that are going on in your life, but what we do need to do is just take an honest assessment of where you stand. And the way that you can do that is on the wheel of life, we have these kind of tick marks. And I'll use financial just so I can throw some numbers at you and kind of keep things clean. But let's say that you have, $100,000 in debt, and you're about halfway through paying down that debt. So on the financial category, $100,000 in debt, and I'm about 50% through paying that down, I would kind of circle that 5 in that tick mark. Or if it's physical and I'm running a marathon, or my goal is to run a marathon and I've only run a half marathon, but I'm still training, you might mark a 5. So kind of giving yourself an honest assessment on where you stand. If it were family and it was, I want to spend more time with my family, I want to spend, I want to dedicate all of Sunday or all of Saturday to my family, and you don't do that right now, then that honest assessment about where you stand would be like a 1 or maybe a 0, which isn't really represented here. So you may need to factor that in. So if you're not doing something, just mark where you're at, right? And give yourself that honest assessment. It's just you. No one else needs to see this unless you want to share it with them. But nobody wins here in lying to yourself. Just give yourself the honest assessment about where you stand. And then what you want to do is you want to, after you kind of mark those, you want to connect the dots. And the reason why you want to connect the dots is because you just want to have a sense of what that looks like. Now, as soon as someone sees this image, they're immediately like, wow, that wheel doesn't roll very well. My life is all out of order. I would caution you about thinking that way. The reality is that I don't know if life is ever smooth. And if life is smooth and you're not encountering any problems or situations that you're having to address or grow through, that might be another issue to address. The reality is that life is bumpy. Things happen. Unexpected things happen. But living intentionally really helps prepare you to handle those things head on. And so in this honest assessment, you could go, wow, on the spiritual, ethical side or the social side, I feel like I've really got things together. Those are 2 categories of my life that I am spot on. Or family and physical. Feel like I'm healthy. I'm doing a really good job. But when it comes to mental and business or financial, so maybe debt or, taking a mental break to kind of make sure that I'm thinking correctly, I'm not overwhelmed, that I'm thinking clearly. Well, I'm not very good in those areas. And that wheel really represents that. You can see it. And so those are things that I might want to focus on. And so in that honest assessment, it's really not about smoothing this wheel out and having this, uneventful or no bumps in the road or anything like that. It's really about just creating a picture for where you currently are and giving you a sense of how you might want to prioritize some of those dreams and aspirations into specific categories that you think you need to work on. So you may have a great dream of building this, building towards running an Ironman or something like that, but you're pretty physically healthy. That's okay to pursue, but there may be another category. Maybe your family is suffering because you're spending so much time training. You might want to address that. That's really kind of the intent of that. So, we always like to kind of create some additional perspective and thoughts, and sometimes a good way to do that is to just get kind of an outside quote on how we should think about some of those things. And so, Matt Kelly is somebody that we love. We love to read his stuff and listen. And one of the things he talks about is just how you're remembered. And this is something, again, that just gives you context for what you're doing, because your kids will tell stories about you, right? And they should. And hopefully those stories they tell about you are stories of great adventure, great accomplishment, that person loved well, that they lived intentionally, that they were someone that didn't just sit back and let life happen to them, but they lived in such a way that they really kind of grabbed life by the reins and they went after it, right? And the reality is that people are going to be talking about you. And we don't think about this. We really don't. We don't. And I'm guilty of this. I don't think about this. I don't think about this enough, at least. And having kids, we have 2 kids, and that really brought a reality of that those children are literally watching everything I'm doing. And it is fascinating how in those first couple years, they're engineered and created in such a way that they just absorb, right? And so you think about, and here we're all guilty of this too if you have kids. So I'm about to give you an example that's going to, maybe bring a certain reality to your life. But I have never shown my daughter, my 4-year-old daughter, how to use an iPhone. But my daughter knows how to navigate that. I've also never shown my son how to use an iPhone. But he knows how to look at it and to pull up the camera and to look through pictures. And he's not even 2. So where do you think he learned that? They sat there and they watched, and this is where we're horribly guilty of this. You're watching something with your kids and you're just kind of on there thumbing through your phone. They see that stuff. And the point is that what you're doing, your teams, what they're seeing you do, how you act, how you think, how you speak, all those things, people are watching that. And it's not that you just want to make sure that everybody says positive things about you. The point is that they're going to say something about you. You're having an impact, positive or negative, on the people around you. And that is why we should think about this daily, because how are you living intentionally? Are you someone that's putting things off? And what is it that your friends would say about you? What is it that your kids are going to say about you? What is it that your community is going to say about you? And so that's really why it's important to think about these things, even on a daily basis, because every action that you have should have a result, right? And that could be a positive result or a negative result. So zooming in a little bit further, we've talked about your dream list. We've talked about the context for those timelines, and you've hopefully given yourself an honest assessment of where you stand in life right now. So let's dig a little bit deeper. And I'm going to give you guys some personal examples here so you can hear a little bit about my story and how Design Your Life has impacted me, and in a lot of ways helped to kind of redirect where I might have been going. So on this kind of category of thinking, it's what do you value most, what describes you best, and what do you stand for? So 3 very specific questions. And this may change over time. What I value, I think, most today is time. I am more aware, having kids, that I don't have enough time, because children really don't understand that you don't have time for something, right? So they have no issue interrupting you, and that's okay. They shouldn't. But that time factor is something that I value a lot of. So how am I using my time? When I come into the office, how am I being diligent with my time so that I can be freed up to be more successful as a father or a friend, whatever it might be, or a husband later, right? So time is really important to me right now. Later, as I get more time, and maybe as my kids get older, some of that might change for me. In terms of what describes you best, what describes you best? And a good way to kind of ask yourself this question is, what is it that your friends would say about you? And there may be some good friends that would say some very specific things about you that are just honest. And, there may be a broader group subset of friends that, may not say great things about you because they don't maybe know you, or they just see one aspect of you, right? So, but asking those kinds of questions to yourself and having that honest conversation gives you a sense of really what is it that describes you best. So, are you busy? Does that describe you best? Are your friends saying, man, that's the busiest person I know? I don't know if I want to be described as busy. I don't think I want that to be the thing that represents who I am. Authentic, genuine, loving, supportive. Like, those are the things that are kind of deep to the soul, right? That really represent, or maybe what you really want to represent, who you are in the world around you. So what describes you best? And a good way to ask that is to maybe your friend group or even your spouse. And then what do you stand for? And, you think about encountering situations that require integrity, or encountering situations that require a deep level of character. So you think about, in terms of what do you stand for, think about roots. What are you rooted in? When life happens to you, when it doesn't go your way, who are you? Who are you in those moments where you're really being tested by the fire and you're really, really being challenged? What do you stand for? And, an array of answers here, but, one of the things might be I stand for integrity, right? And so it doesn't matter, or telling the truth. And so it doesn't matter what the situation is around me. Not saying that I'm perfect, right? That's not also the point of this. It's not to say that in this statement that you're perfect and you never mess up. But the point of it is when you encounter a specific situation, where is that situation just going to run into an oak tree or into a mountain where you're just rooted deep? And integrity is a great one, obviously. And there are a number of them. But meaning that you're always going to tell the truth. And to the degree that it's in your control and you're aware and you're making the right decisions, you're always going to make a decision that is above the line, right? And so those are things that you need to ask yourself, and you need to have an honest conversation with yourself about this, because you really need to know, is this true? And again, that's why you need to invite the right people into this conversation, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And to take that a little bit deeper, because we're just kind of talking about maybe one parameter of this, what you really want to do is list what are your kind of top 5 values and put those in some sort of order of priority. And I'll give you an example here in this next slide, because you may think something is true, but the way in which your life would not point to that thing being true. And so this is where we're starting to get more and more specific about how you're living your life and how you're living intentionally. So let's say that one of your values is family. And that's an easy one because, you know, I can talk about that, and I'll be honest here. Sometimes I'm really good at that, and sometimes, you know, I'm kind of shooing my kid off because I'm in the middle of doing something, and then, you know, kind of remember later that the thing that I'm doing really doesn't have any sort of eternal significance. But, you know, my kid wanting to show me something is so much more important most times than what I'm doing. So let's just say family is the thing that's most important to you. And there could be some other things here, you know, how you take care of yourself, how you take care of your mental health. But, you know, what's the priority of those things? In this example that I'm sharing with you guys, family is the number 2, health is number 1. I think we can probably understand. If you're not healthy and taking care of yourself, you're probably not around to take care of your family. But just to focus in on family, a rule that might verify or validate that that's actually true for me is that every single day I spend 2 hours with my family. And so I have time where I put my phone down and I'm not perusing, you know, the internet, the news, checking text messages, checking my email, and I'm just present. And what's wild is that we used to be this way, you know, 20 years ago before these things were stuck to our ears and to our hands. We used to do that, right? And what's kind of scary is if you can just think back, like, how did you communicate or get anywhere without a phone? And it's shocking that we did anything, right? But there's probably some reality of the fact that we're certainly probably more present in conversation. You can hardly get through a conversation when your phone's just dinging off or somebody's phone is just dinging off in the background, which is not how that should be. But a rule, if I'm being honest with myself, that might represent that I do prioritize my family appropriately, it's that I spend 2 hours a day. But really, what I would challenge you to do is to plus that. So it's not just that you spend 2 hours a day with your family, but what's a rule or a change or an edit that you need to add to this structure so that this is abundantly true for you. And it might be that you want to spend all day Saturday or all day Sunday or whatever it might be with your family. That's a family day. It's dedicated to family. And if you don't do these things, here's the thing about living intentionally. If we don't tell our life where it's going to go, if we don't tell our day where it's going to go, somebody else is going to creep in there and tell us where to go. And I don't know about you, but I want to spend the rest of my life being redirected by everybody around me. I'd rather do something like set aside a family day and pour into my kids and pour into my wife, and for that to have bearing on who they become, right? Versus someone else coming in here and saying, no, I need that time for this thing and I need that time for this thing. And the reality is that there is going to be plenty of opportunities for us to be distracted. If one of your goals was health and you needed to lower your cholesterol and eat healthy, or you wanted to start running or walking or do whatever you needed to do to lose weight and up your fitness level, there are going to be plenty of opportunities to be distracted. Oh, your friends are getting together, let's go out to eat. No, I'm not going to do that. You know why? Because the rule said, I will stop eating out. I will only buy groceries. And a way to make that abundantly true is I'm going to sign up for maybe a subscription service so that my groceries are automatically delivered. I don't know. I don't know what that is for you. But the point of this is to prioritize your values, write a rule that represents if that rule is true for you, and then what's a way to make that abundantly true? Because that rule may need a change so that it's absolutely true for you and it's represented that way. And then you have something that tells you right in front of you how you should be living intentionally based off of the things that you prioritize in terms of your values. So again, zeroing in on more of what it takes to live intentionally. So here's a really good question for us. What do you want to become? And I'll tell you that it's not enough to know what you don't want to be. I know it sounds maybe like an odd approach to how this comes together, but I'll give you some personal examples here. I love my family. I love my dad and I love my mom. And God bless them. They did the best they could with what was in front of them. But I learned nothing about financial stewardship, living responsibly, certainly living intentionally. Now, I recognize this because I constantly was in a state of being acutely aware that we did not have enough money. And this isn't like some sob story I'm trying to share with you guys. Love my parents. They're great. I'm close to them today. But this is just the reality of kind of the world that I was raised in. I remember what it was like to be on food stamps. Okay, I remember that. I remember, asking for lunch money and not having lunch money, and how that hurt my parents, and so not even wanting to ask for things. I remember that. I absolutely remember that so much that I knew up until I was 18 what I did not want to become. I did not want that. I never wanted to live in any sort of world where I had financial insecurity. None of that. So I knew exactly what I did not want to be. But as I headed into the world and went to school and basically just kind of sat back and started learning that there were different ways of thinking, there were different ways of going about life. Wow, there were other people that didn't live paycheck to paycheck. I would start to ask myself questions about how that came to be. And I was in several unique situations where I was around people who went from nothing to something, meaning ultra wealthy. And so I'd always kind of ask some questions about how they did that. And what was fascinating is in that kind of state of being around some of those individuals, I think the curtain was kind of peeled back, that it's not that, because I always thought that if you had anything, there's something special about you. It's not that they have anything special about them. Yeah, they're smart. Yes, they, are intelligent people, but not in a way that is superior to the rest of the world around them. But they ask lots of questions. They're willing to take risk. And I think the lesson from that is that no one out there has some sort of superpower that they were born with that you don't have. Reality is that we were all positioned to have an equal opportunity in front of us, but it's our willingness to go after that, our willingness to dig deep, to do the things that no one else is willing to do, and to make decisions, make intentional decisions, and to go about life intentionally. And versus just sitting back and letting life happen to you. It's just unfortunate that most of society is in that category where they let life kind of happen to them. So didn't know what I wanted to become, knew what I did not want to be. And so here I am. I want to marry this beautiful woman who I'd been dating for 12 months. And so I'm sitting in front of my now wife's. We've been married for almost 15 years, so there's always a good ending here. But I'm sitting in front of my father-in-law, and I'm saying, I'm asking for his permission. I want his blessing, right? Trying to do the right thing. Want his blessing. Want his involvement in that. And I don't have a job. I'm on like my 4th victory lap for my senior year in college. So, I'm not a doctor, but I did go to school for 8 years. And I'm sitting there and having this conversation with him, and I really have no plan other than in the back of my mind, I know what I don't want to be, but I really have no picture of what I want to be. And so naturally, his response to me asking for his blessing was, I'll think about it, right? Not the answer I was looking for. In the back of my mind, I was like, I already bought the ring with my student loan money, so I'm kind of like sealed here. I've got to do this. But anyways, eventually win him over, get married, and it's interesting when you get married and you're young, everyone wants to come around you and tell you all the things that you should do. And so I did not know what I wanted to be, right? Trying to make that very clear. I had no idea what I wanted to be, knew what I did not want to be. But as we embarked on this journey of life together, we started listening to the conventional wisdom around us. And the conventional wisdom said, well, you got to get credit because you're going to buy a house eventually, so y'all should get credit cards. So we got credit cards. Your car is looking a little rough, and so now that you're married, you probably should get a brand new car, right? Because that's what you do. You can get a great financing package. So in the first 30 days of being married, my wife and I were $100,000 in debt. Now, that also includes some of our student loans because I was just taking out every loan I could to get through school, right? So being newlywed and being $100,000 in debt is not wise, okay? But we listened to conventional wisdom, and then we ran across a book about debt-free living and how to live intentionally. We read that, and it was ironic timing because I was already $100,000 in debt, and I ran across this book that literally gave me a playbook out of that. And so my wife and I, for the next 5 years, worked all kinds of jobs. We said, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to make our decisions. We would do things like spend months where we didn't spend anything other than our bills, and we were eating like, beanie weenies out of cans and all kinds of things, right? And during that period, during that 5-year period, we probably had 3 jobs between the two. Each of us had 3 jobs that we were constantly, and we worked all the time. And so I knew what I did not want to be, but I started to see a picture of what could be. and others who did have success and did have areas of their life together that I wanted really started to speak into us. And so we started to get a picture of what could be. And so that picture of what we wanted to become became clearer and clearer over time. 5 years into that debt journey, we paid $100,000 in debt off, debt-free. We've never gone back into debt since, and we started paying cash for school. So when you put all that together, that number is much larger than $100,000. She was going to a private university. I was just rounding out my last couple of victory laps for my senior year, so I was still kind of trickling along there. But it was certainly far more than $100,000. But we started paying cash for school, and we paid down our debt. And then all of a sudden, we had this story of debt freedom. And if you knew something about the Stantons, if you were to say, hey, how are you doing, Luke? Or how are you doing, Haley? You'd say, oh, we're doing great. We're paying down our debt. It was almost like it was just part of everything we talked about, because that's what we were becoming. We were going to be debt-free. And that just became part of our story. And what's fascinating about that is, and this is something that you just need to lean into for a second, if you've just kind of zoned out, what you're becoming and what you're chasing after, people are going to pay attention to. As we started to go down this journey of debt freedom, our friends jumped on board, our family jumped on board. And because of a decision that we made to live intentionally, we saw loads of families become debt-free as well. In their late 60s in some cases, earlier in their journey in some cases. But people started to capture onto that story of what could be because they saw somebody else doing it. And so everything we're talking about here, it's not just how it has implications for you personally, but people are watching. And if you're building a business, your team members are watching. And it's vitally important that they see what could be. And so part of this is not you only creating a dream for yourself of what you want to become, but it's a powerful story that people can latch onto and start to see what they can become. And so for us, fast forward, we're 15 years into marriage, happily married, 2 wonderful kids. We don't have a debt snowball, right? We have an investment snowball. So we're on the other end of that too, where all of that momentum and all that discipline gets to roll into giving and to building wealth and to creating a life for my kids that is very different than what I was raised in. So very long story there for you guys, but it's really important that you understand what you want to become. And it's not enough just to know what you don't want to be, because I found myself in the exact same place that my parents were, because I didn't know what I wanted to be. And so that journey of becoming is powerful, which is a great segue because we're going to talk about what does it take to get there. So what I would challenge you guys to do is pick a category. So we went through those 6 kind of categories of life. In this case, we've picked financial. And you need to create a statement for yourself, maybe for your family, for your business. I'll let you kind of choose where this statement applies. But what is it that you want to become? What's that crystal clear picture of who you want to be? In this case, a financial steward, a wise investor, successful business owner, and a generous giver. If it were me in this specific example, I would just add debt-free because I don't ever want to go back into having to pay down debt again. Just to go back a little bit, one of the jobs that we had was picking pecans. And the economics of running around with the trash bag and picking up pecans off the ground is not very powerful or compelling. But it was downtime that we had that we were willing to do something. And I remember our fingers literally being stained green from picking up pecans. I think we turned in like hundreds of pounds of pecans. We probably made like $20. But again, it's just that idea of willing to do anything and everything to become that thing that you're chasing after. But in this case, again, creating that clear picture of what you want to become as it pertains to that financial category. So a financial steward, wise investor, successful business owner, and a generous giver. Well, so what is the goal around that? And in this specific example, it's $5 million and a 4% annual rate of return in 10 years. So it's a 10-year goal. 10-year goals are powerful. 5-year goals are powerful. 1-year goals are powerful. In this example, it's 10 years because you really need to start to back into what does it take to reach this. But $5 million, 4% annual return, so that's $200,000 in 10 years. That's the very specific goal that you're chasing after. It's physical, could be a marathon, whatever it is. But you want your goal to be specific. You want to be very, very specific with what it is that you're chasing after and then the timing of when that's going to get done. Again, that could be 6 months from now, a year from now, but you want to be very specific with that. And the next thing that you want to do is write out a first step. Because what you're going to want to do is go, okay, I've stopped at my goal. And that's where most people stop. But we're not most people, are we, right? You're sitting on this, you're listening to this presentation. You're not most people. You're part of the 1% that want to live intentionally, that have the impact that is powerful for the community around them. So don't put this off tomorrow, right? First step. What's the very first step for this one? Well, the very first step is I'm going to pay down all my debt. I'm going to get rid of all my credit card debt, everything that is just sucking my income out of my pocket every single month. It's not building interest in the way that we want it to build interest. I'm going to eradicate that debt. That's the very first step I'm going to take into getting into a place where I have 10 million and, 5 million and 4% annual rate of return. The second step, because we're all about a first step and a second step to make it abundantly true, is hold yourself accountable to making an appointment with a financial advisor to talk about your plan and help invite in somebody wise. And that's a really big clue here. You want to involve others who are having success in these areas. It's really important that you look for people that are successful. And they don't have to be successful in all areas. You can find somebody that's really great at finances, but they really don't have the marriage that you want. Okay, so go find a couple that's 90 years old and they're still chasing each other around, right? That's the couple that you want to ask the secrets of a successful marriage to about. So, but bring someone in to kind of help give some accountability and some wisdom to what it is that you're chasing after. Second step, meet with a financial advisor, have them build or work with you on building a specific plan to make that goal a reality for you. And the other thing that you want to do is just go ahead and identify what are the obstacles that you're going to run into, because that's going to happen, right? Remember your wheel of life, it's not a smooth wheel. Things happen to us every single day that you don't necessarily want to happen. But if you can live intentionally, and that's part of setting the obstacle, something's going to happen to me. What is it? You're not going to be surprised when it happens, because being surprised by that thing might kick you back down into the dirt, and it's a struggle to get back out of that. So just call it out. Oh, I expected that I was going to get burned out. I expected that I might miss a payment or didn't pay as much debt down this month as I wanted to. I expected someone not to be in my corner, or to, I shared this goal with somebody and they shot it down. I just expected those things to happen. So when they happen, you're not surprised. It's like, oh yeah, I expect this to happen. Let's keep going. So what you want to do is identify the obstacles that you might run into so you can already start to think about how you're going to overcome those things. And then there's a really important category. There's actually two. One of them is who needs to know. And there are people that need to know. Your spouse needs to know. There is a close circle of friends, hopefully, that you have in your life that need to know, or one friend that needs to know. And maybe it's your financial advisor because you don't have anybody close enough yet, but somebody needs to know what it is that you're working on. And the reality is that you need to create this space of vulnerability. And the reason why is that, as soon as you use the word vulnerable, people start to kind of tense up and be like, I don't want to be vulnerable. I mean, who does, I guess? But in terms of developing vulnerability as a skill set, it's a really powerful motivator. It's a really powerful element in building really a strong anything, right? Because we're all in this together. And as you start to be vulnerable, you'll find that most people can go, yeah, I can identify with that. And there's some real power in creating a space where you can be vulnerable with something. You got to be vulnerable with the right people. And then get those people to kind of come around you and say, oh yeah, I struggled with that too. Here's how I overcame that thing. Here's how I overcame that obstacle. So there's someone that needs to know, identify who that is, write them down, call them, text them, say, hey, I know this is odd, but this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm working on. You need to know, hold me accountable. And there's a second important category, very important category. There's a group of people, sometimes a bigger group of people that don't need to know, okay? Cynical relatives, if it's a business goal or an investment, your brothers, uncles, whatever, who doesn't have two coins to rub together, who's up to their eyeballs in debt. When you're sitting around for a holiday or something like that, you probably don't need to volunteer what you're working towards. They just don't need to know, because they can't even conceptualize what it is that you're working on. And so that means that as you start to share those things, they're not going to even be able to come around you. And chances are they're going to be insecure about what you're sharing. And so when that happens, they tend to start to shoot those things down. So identify who doesn't need to know so you don't slip up. And the other thing is you really want to identify how you might feel when you reach that goal. And the reason being is that we're bad at celebrating our wins, and we work so hard for something, but when it comes to winning the thing, or when things get really hard, we forget what it's going to feel like. Why did you set out to do this in the first place? And sometimes it's a bad feeling. I don't want to ever feel anxious about money again. I don't ever want to feel insecure about money again. And so therefore, I'm going to live an intentional life. I'm going to be debt-free. I'm going to live within my means. I'm going to provide for my family. And that's going to create a peace of mind for them. So what will it feel like? What will you feel like is important, because if you can pick something here, but if I walk into a library, when I'm taking my daughter to go to get books, if we walk into a library, I'm instantly taken back to second grade, Mrs. Stevens' class. And for whatever reason, that room and a library smell the same. So immediately I can remember being in second grade. Memories, feelings have a real significance and motivation factor when it comes to the things that we're working towards. So go ahead and identify what it is that you'll feel like, or how do you want to feel when you get at that thing. I want to have peace of mind. I want to feel happy. I want to feel that I'm in a place of celebrating, those kinds of things. Identify what that emotion will be. And here's one of the most important factors, is make it visible. And so again, this goes back to that space of vulnerability, but put this where appropriate. If it's a business goal, go slap that thing in your office so that all of your team members see that in 5 years, 10 years, we're going to be a $5 million business, $10 million business. Inspire them to know where you're going, because if you're building a big business, I want to be part of that. That probably means increased compensation, increased opportunities as a team member, leadership roles, management roles. But create that vision, create that space where people can see what you're working on. You want your kids to see it. You want your team members to see it at work, where it's appropriate. But one of the things is, unless you show them, they may have no context for any of these things ever. No one's ever shown them these things. So you may want to be that person that helps to create that picture of what it is that they're becoming. And the last thing to share with you guys is, how do you want to be remembered? Sometimes in these kinds of sessions, it's this this statement of get after it, chase after it, be strong, be diligent, those kinds of things. And that's certainly powerful. But what I would tell you is, we need you, right? Our communities need you. Your families need you. There are people around you that need you. So let's not make this decision because it's too hard or it's only personal to me. Make this decision and do something today, because there is a whole host of people that need you to be that inspiration, to be that person that shows them what is possible. And that is Design Your Life.
Thank you, Luke. We appreciate your insight into creating your dream list and the journey of becoming. A few questions have come up as you've been speaking. Do you have time to answer a couple?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So the first question that came in was, do you have any advice on the number one thing someone should do to get started?
Yes, and this is an easy one, all right? You've already heard me say it 100 times. Just do something, all right? So here's the easy one. If it's physical and you want to be able to do 100 push-ups, after you get off this session, go do 1 push-up. Just go do something and begin to solidify the behaviors, the steps to accomplishing your goals. So that's the big thing. Just do something now, immediately.
Wow, so simple. Are there any silver bullets that exist that make someone uniquely successful?
I've looked at a lot of people, and there are a lot of people out there that I would say are my mentors. They may not know they're my mentors, but they're doing things and saying things. I'm paying attention to them, and so that could be someone that you've never met, but within kind of that mentorship role, what I find very common is this character trait of curiosity. And so be curious. Ask a lot of vulnerable questions. When you see someone being successful, just go ask them. Go email them, figure out how to ask them, how is it that you did that thing? So be very, very curious. But don't be curious and just say, I wonder. Do something about that. Go ask the question and see what that thing is that someone did that made them uniquely successful. The answers are out there. You just have to go kind of dig them up and then hold on to them.
That's great advice. That's such a great leadership quality to be curious. I think Ted Lasso talks about that on his show.
Yeah, he does.
Be curious instead of judgmental.
He does, yeah.
Right? So there's one last question. Are there any skills you would recommend someone developing to better live their life by design?
So life is hard, right? And things happen to us. And, again, kind of pulling back that veil, I would have thought that there are certain people with calm superpowers, and I would never have those superpowers, and so therefore I would never be able to do that thing. But kind of going along with curiosity and doing something, develop your grit muscle. And that's a real thing, right? The ability to persevere, the ability to work through what no one else is willing to do. We learned a lot about this in kind of our debt story. I just wasn't embarrassed about it. I went and picked up pecans. I did anything and everything that it took to pay down our debt. And that really helped to kind of strengthen that grit muscle so that when you encounter other things or you endeavor to do bigger and better things, you really have that skill set, that characteristic developed so that you can push through. And that's a lot of what you find between people that are uniquely successful and those that may not reach their goals. They just outworked everybody else around them. And that's a reality for us. We can we have that skill set. That's available to everybody, right? So I would say develop that grit muscle.
That's wonderful. Well, thanks for taking the time with us today, Luke. We really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to hear how identifying your dreams is the key to setting you on the path to living them out. When it comes to franchising, we know there are many opportunities out there for you to consider. We hope that Luke was able to help show how important goal setting and looking at your life journey is when you begin looking into business ownership and specifically franchising. When it comes to your future, it's important to do your research, understand the facts, and do your due diligence before coming to your own conclusion. When the time comes and you're ready to explore business ownership, and possibly Neighborly, you can visit our website at franchise.neighborly.com for more information, or you can reach out to us directly. We're always willing to help guide you on your journey or get you in touch with one of our experienced franchise developers. Before you go, there's a few other reminders I have for you. A replay of this webinar will be available on our website, so you can rewatch it as many times as you'd like. We'll also provide the replay link via email for you to review or share with someone else. Our next webinar will be coming up in February. Be sure to check your email for more information and to register. Thank you all for watching. We look forward to seeing you for our next webinar.